Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi and today we have another team report from the first regional of Regulation C and I am joined by another top player. I am joined by Fiona. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Well, thanks for coming on the channel. It's good to have you. It's been a little while since your last team report. And this time you had a really impressive run at Fort Wayne Regionals. But first, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
So I don't know if you guys remember me from previous Addy videos, but there was one I did well in the first Hatterene series, or I guess it was called Women's Tournament at the time, and that was in Series 6 of Sword and Shield. But other than that, outside of it, I qualified for Worlds three times, 2018, 2019, and 22, hoping for a 2023 one as well. Um, and yeah, I've been playing for quite a long time, since 2017 actively, and yeah.
The Toronto locals that we get to were bloodbaths for sure. Definitely a lot of
Yeah.
competitive players. So we've had a lot of tough battles and yeah, definitely. And I think you made what day two at 2018 U.S. Nationals, right? NAIC.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
But yeah. So and of course you got top four at the first Regulation C event using this team. So talk to me about how you approached the lead up to this tournament. This of course was the first week of the format. So tell me about how you prepared for this tournament and how you ended up building your team.
All right. So originally, I was dead set on using Dondozo in this tournament. Like this, none of this was what was my builder, other than maybe Bax Caliber, which was in a consideration as well, and of course automatically Flutter Mane because I think it's the best Pokemon in the format, undisputedly. 80%, yeah, I think it was like 70 or 80% usage, kind of speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I said, I was dead set on Dondozo. My first team of the format, I did well in a Nino tournament, with Dondozo, Tatsu, and Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, Pawmot, and Dragonite. And I just felt really good with it because I've been using Dondozo Pawmot since Series 1. Unfortunately, right before the tournament, I started to just do really poorly and I just wasn't vibing with the team anymore. So I'm like, okay, we gotta restart from scratch. And what's been doing really well for me, I think the best Pokemon that I've used in Scarlet and Violet is Baxcalibur. That's the most successful Pokemon I've had. Because I also got second place in the Hatterene series for Scarlet and Violet. And it's a comfort pick for me. I just always felt like it just lives so many hits. Its bulk is so good. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do next. I love Tauros in Series 2, like early Series 2, before Fluttermane and Bundle like really picked up high usage. Um, and I thought, okay, with the Ruins coming out, Tauros is going to be great in Series 3, or Regulation C, I should say. And well, I just couldn't get it to work. I didn't have enough time. There was only 1 week left for preparation, and it just wasn't working with me. And I said, okay, we're gonna look back on like results. There was some grassroots going on. Just there was an Italian local, I believe, that happened, and Bandfox did well with Gyarados actually, and there was a few Gyaradoses that were popping up in like these grassroots tournament and the ladder teams, and it actually seemed really good because it's good into Ting Lu, who is infamous for clicking Fisher. Um, Good into Chi-Yu as well, and it's good into those balance teams. The what's it called? Amoonguss Arcanine Palafin Core. It's really strong into those. For Amoonguss, you have Taunt, and for Arcanine, you're just naturally better into it. And Palafin, it can't really hit you once you intimidate it, and you ignore it with Thunder Wave. So it was just a really strong call, and I think it was the MVP of the weekend. And yeah, I just stuck with Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, because, like I said, I was used to them on the Dondozo team, so I thought that would be a good idea. The Ting Lu slot originally was a King Gambit, but I felt like I didn't need two dark coverages, and it just didn't feel right on the team. So I dropped it and I put Ting Lu because I thought, it would do the same thing in a Chi-Yu Flutter Mirror. Because I was looking, that's originally what the idea was. It was going to be Terrafire King Gambit to be good into the Chi-Yu Flutter. But it didn't work out that way and I ended up using Ting Lu instead. And then Amoonguss is just generally a strong redirector. It's got put up a lot of pressure with Spore, and it heals up the team, which is really nice.
And so, when did these six come together in terms of like how long before the tournament were you set on your team?
Um, I think it was the Tuesday or the Wednesday before, and I just kind of got a bunch of games. I felt like it was doing well. I was hard stuck in the 1400s on Showdown for a while, and I just couldn't like get a streak in, and I couldn't feel myself. But this was the team I was feeling the most comfortable with. The only thing I was kind of annoyed with playing against was Dondozo stuff, or like Tusk Flutter, which I think I was just kind of ladder braining and not clicking buttons kind of thing. And then I realized, oh wait, Gyarados just does naturally well into that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. I think that showdown practice, especially when the format is as early as it is definitely a little harder to it's a little hard to interpret results there, right? Because
hmm
you don't necessarily know you're going to face at the tournament, and also it is best of one, and people are not as well practiced. They don't have your game plans, and also closed team sheet a lot of times. So it's not. I don't think it's surprising that you. I know I was talking to Luca earlier, and he was also saying he didn't have a ton of practice on ladder with his team. Not surprising that you're using a bunch of good mons, you know exactly what they're supposed to do, and so it ended up doing well despite the lack of high ladder practice. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's a great overview of how the team came together. Do you want to talk about the Pokemon themselves and why they are trained the way they are?
So the Flutter Mane in particular, I think Speed Boost is really good with Chi-Yu because if you can be faster than other Flutter Manes, you should KO a lot of them with Shadow Ball with Beads of Ruin. Like a lot of them. Obviously, there's some that do live that are like heavy HP invested. They never really invest too much in their special defense, so that's never really a concern. But that was the main thing that I really liked about the main thing I liked. And now everybody's using Speed Boost Flutter, so it is something to know. Gyarados as well originally went through a different spread change. I just thought, it would be better to invest in its Fizdef because it actually has a naturally good Spadef stat, and I have a Ting Lu, so I thought originally that was going to be the good play. And then I practiced a bit, and then I'm like, wait, I'm dying to these Moonblasts. I shouldn't be dying to these Moonblasts. So I switched to Careful, and I just rehauled the set, make sure I had good defense, and it was just really strong and just really hard to take out. And Amoonguss as well is another good one to bring up. Originally, I had special defense, but I think physical defense is better in this format right now because the things that threaten it, Baxcalibur, which is also really common, and Arcanine are physical. Palafin as well, if it gets enough hits in, you want to survive those hits. And now King Gambit's rising up, so you especially want to take a hit from that.
Yeah, and like Chen Pao too, right? I think this spread,
Yeah.
I would think a similar spread. I think in the IC, and I think this is supposed to live like a Chen Pao Ice Spinner, for example.
Yeah.
So, whereas like Fluttermane, you can probably tank an attack. It's all neutral or resisted, so it does make sense, I think, to run Fizdef. How did you feel about the? Did you like Citrus Berry, and did you like the moves that you were running on Amoonguss? I know these are pretty standard in Series 2, but it's a new format. Did you ever rethink what you were running on Amoonguss there?
Citrus, I think, was the best item for it. I think there's so many times where the citrus berry just procs and you just get under half a lot and it just procs a lot, and especially if there's a lot of Baxcaliburs that are running Icicle Spear as well. You can just survive depending on rolls or if you don't get crit, or even just Icicle Crash in general. You take a heavy hit and then you citrus berry back up, and then you can get to a really healthy amount once you switch out the next turn with Regenerator. I think Protect is really strong on Amoonguss, especially in open sheets, because there are so many people that'll just tunnel in onto the Amoonguss and they'll think, I need to get rid of it before it spores me, but you can just Protect. And then it just creates a whole nother mind game as well. Pollen Puff, I think that's Amoonguss's one of Amoonguss's best moves as well. Obviously, Spore and Rage Powder are given, but I think Pollen Puff is just so strong. Because it helps with the longevity of the team, and even sometimes you can do decent damage to all these dark Pokemon that are around as well. So I definitely don't regret that. The only thing I do regret is being zero speed on it, and I did want to run, like not be. I still wanted to be like a lower speed nature, but I didn't want to run zero speed, just in case there was somebody else that was running Torkoal or something that were running that were outspeeding me, and that did come up, and it did biting me later. But yeah, the only reason I ended up running zero speed was because I didn't get a 31 speed in time, and I already had one bred for me myself.
Makes sense. And then go back to the Gyarados. This is not a Pokemon that saw a ton of play in the past. It's obviously rising in usage in Regulation C, partially due to your success with it. Did you feel like these four moves were always what you're planning on using, or did you consider some other options on there?
So originally I wasn't sure what to do in the fourth move slot. Waterfall's a given. That's your main damaging move. Thunderwave was really nice for speed control and potential endgames where you can flinch them out or para-flinch them with Dark Pulse plus Waterfall itself. Taunt, of course, as well, a given, I think, because just having Taunt against stuff like Amoonguss or even Trick Room setters in general is just really, really good. And now the fourth move I was torn between because I tested Protect and like I just felt kind of meh about it. It didn't really help me in many scenarios. I barely clicked it. I felt like something else could be there. Icy Wind also didn't really come into play. Iron Head, I still don't see the point. Like, I'm just gonna hit Flutter for over half anyway, and it doesn't even kill a lot of Flutters unless I Terra Steel. Which, even then, I don't really want that to be my main way of killing Flutter Main. I have a lot more ways to deal with it. So I thought, why not Helping Hand? And it Helping Hand with Baxcalibur, Flutter Main, and Chi-Yu is really strong. Helping Hand Heat Wave does so much, or Helping Hand Overheat as well. Even Helping Hand Shadow Ball, Helping Hand Moonblast, Helping Hand Glaive Rush. You can counteract and intimidate. Like they intimidate you, but you can Helping Hand them, and you can Helping Hand your partner, and yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then, you talked a little bit about your why you were running the speed boosting Flutter, but about the other three Pokemon. I guess they're pretty standard, but did you ever consider any other moves, or did you? And tell me about the EV spreads that you chose to run.
Let me think. So the Chi-Yu specifically, I guess we should probably talk about that because a lot of people are probably like, why? Or I run a lot of bulk on a Scarfmon, but it actually had pretty good bulk. Now, unfortunately, this speed tier isn't that good for it right now because it does underspeed Dragapult. This was built when Dragapult wasn't a thing. So you might, in the future, if you guys wanted to use this team, you should probably bump the speed up to at least creep Dragapult. This was calced to live a Baby Palafin Terra Water Jet Punch. So I was thinking that would come into play. It's nice, but I don't think it was that necessary. Just the general HP stat as well is good for just surviving Moonblasts or any strong hits in general. And then 116 is the jump point for Modest, so I figured I'd just leave it at that. Ting Lu, I didn't think I need too much attack on it. Obviously you run max special defense because that's its weakest stat, and you just want to have as much bulk as possible into it, especially with your Assault Vest and your Vessel of Ruin ability. I hit the first jump point with 76 attack. I figured that was gonna kill most Flutter mains, unless they were heavily invested with to live a heavy slam. Um,
And I guess Tinglu, I feel like most of the ones that I've seen are Terra Poison. Why did you choose to run Terra Water instead?
so I originally did run Terra Poison, but I kind of wanted to have a defensive Terra type that was good into Dondozo specifically. Like, unfortunately, if they are Terra Grass, you still get hit for super effective with this, which is why I also considered running Grass. But I still thought this would be good into Arcanine and Palafin simultaneously. It would be good into Lilycole, or not Lillicant, but Torkoal. You won't take the Eruption. I'd rather take the Leaf Storm than the Eruption. But that was my main thing. It just kind of had a nice balance between it was good into Palafin Arcanine and good into Torkoal
That makes sense.
and Dondozo.
Yeah. And then I guess on a similar note, I think most Fluttermane, at least looking at the global competition stats, most of them were either Terra Fairy or Terra Steel. Why'd you choose to run Terra Grass on this?
Um, I ran Terra Grass because I wanted another way around Rage Powder or Spore. I still think I do think Terra Fairy is better overall with this specifically, but I thought Terra Grass was a cool idea for just getting around Rage Powder and what's it called, Spore, while also being resisted by Palafin and I guess Dondozo to an extent.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I guess last but not least is the Baxcalibur. You said this was kind of a comfort pick for you, but did you ever consider any other sets on it? And what exactly do the EVs on this Pokemon do?
So Baxcalibur, the EVs I've had they're very similar to Maluka's EVs from what's it called? San Diego. But I bumped up the special defense so that you can live the Fluttermane Moonblast, like a not a modest one, but like a timid one. Um I chose Terra Water for this. I actually was mulling over a bunch of Terra types for Bax. Um I liked Poison in Series 2, but Series 3 or on this team, specifically, I wanted to resist Palafin and Arcanine and not take super effective damage from Great Tusk if I choose to Terra. I considered Fire. That came up in what I thought would be a cool idea in the Chi-Yu Fluttermane. But the problem with that is that you're weak to Palafin, and that's in my opinion that's just not good. At least for this team. If you have a better answer to it, then by all means. But I preferred Water, and it I think it was the good choice.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so I guess that's a really solid overview of what the Pokemon do. And I guess the next question is, how do you play this team? Obviously, you've got a lot of really strong Pokemon, and it seems like you've got a lot of really versatile lines with your really powerful, Tinglu, Gyarados, and Movius defensive core. But did you have any really common game plans that you used, or were there any opposing teams that you saw and you were like, I have these very specific lines. I don't have much room for deviation.
So with with the main line I had, I wanted to have a game plan into Chi-Yu Flutter, and Ting Lu Bax is really good into it because you can protect Heavy Slam and pressure Fluttermane. You have Terra Water on Bax if you want to attempt to do damage that turn, because you have the Vessel of Ruin just helping out bulk out Bax to get through it, and it's just really hard for Chi-Yu Flutter to get through that lead consistently without losing an important piece on their end. Fluttermane Chi-Yu as well. My own Fluttermane Chi-Yu is a good lead. Um, and you can also get into a position later where Gyarados can come in and helping hand either one of the Chi-Yu or Flutter. Generally, I liked having Gyara in the back all the time, just having an Intimidate switch in. Against Amoonguss, I always made sure to lead one of Bax or Chi-Yu, depending on the matchup, because just pressuring it immediately. And then the next turn, what you can do is have Gara on the field, or have it switch in, or have because it's a sport, it has Lumberry, so you can just switch it in freely, or you can have your Amoonguss switch in if you want, because it makes it really hard for them to get a spore off because they would either A, need to survive and get into a position where they're in a good spot, or B, they have to spore the right slot as well. Like, I could just protect and switch in my Amoonguss if I really wanted to, if I had, like, backs out or something. Or even, like, Gyarados switch it in and then taunt it the next turn, and then it's forced to Pollen Puff, which, I mean, you can play around. Once Amoonguss doesn't have Spore or Rage Powder anymore, it's a lot easier to cripple a team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Were there any other, I guess, teams or game plans that you needed to account for really specifically?
So going into this tournament, the most popular team I saw on the ladder was Baxcalibur, Palafin, Arcanine, Amoonguss, and then depending on the filler, it can really vary from there. But I wanted to make sure I had a game plan into that and win 100% of the time. And Gyarados really helps with that because it's really difficult for them to break it. Some Fluttermanes do have Thunderbolt, but you can, fortunately with open team sheets, you can see that. And then generally when they are Thunderbolt, they're specs. So then you can abuse the fact that they're locked into Thunderbolt the next turn, or they have to either switch or just do nothing to your Mons. I think I played that Bax team like 4 rounds, I believe, four or 5 times, and I beat it every single time. So definitely paid off. It depends on how they play. You can bring Bax Gyarados for sure, and have a variation of Amoonguss, Chi-Yu, or Fluttermane, depending on how they play. I don't think Ting Lu ever comes to that, because I don't feel like it applies enough pressure, because there's barely any special attackers on that. But Amoonguss came in really nicely versus one of my top cut matches, or day 2 matches, I should say. Whereas Chi-Yu Flutter Bax Gyarados just did enough versus my other opponents and just either overwhelmed them and they lost an important piece in their Amoonguss or their Baxcalibur, and then it was really hard for them to win. Against Talonflame stuff, I had Gyarados as well, just leading Bax, and Gyarados was really strong into that. Even as long as they didn't have a King Gambit specifically, then you could lead Gyarados into that freely, and it's really tough for them to do damage, like the Talon Tusk. Mm-hmm. Those are the 2 main things I theoried, because those are the 2 most common ones.
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, again, this was week 1 of the format, not a ton of established teams, and those were the 2 teams that, I think people were looking out for. Obviously, they did very well as well, so... and you did farm day 2. You went 5-0 in day 2, so it's not surprising that you had really strong game plans into some of the stronger teams that we expected to see in the format. And yeah, I guess on that note, do you want to tell me about your tournament run?
All right, so some of my notable matches. Like I said, round 1, I started the day off with the what's it called, the Bax Balance team, Palance, I guess what they call it now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just was able to position Gyarados to where they couldn't really do much, where Bax was just able to get around their team. They did throw out a Fissure on my Bax, and it missed, so thank goodness. I only gave him a chance to throw out 1, and it missed. And then I lost to James Evans, who had Iron Jugulus, Iron Hands. I believe they got day 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This team, I couldn't figure out the game plan in game one. It took me another game to figure it out what a consistent game plan was because I was worried they would go the Jugulus mode because booster energy makes it so that it outspeeds my Chi Yu and get a tailwind off. And I was very nervous about leading Chi Yu into this. Um, but I realized that he wasn't going for that mode. And I didn't realize that until game two. And I was able to win game two. And then game three, I kind of figured he was just going to stick with the same mode. He wasn't going to adapt, and that's exactly what happened. Or, and unfortunately, the game just didn't go my way. Like, I got unfortunate rock slide flinches at the wrong time, and Flare Blitz burn into my Ting-Lu, and it just, that's Pokemon. That's just how it is. But that didn't go the best. I played against Borgie, and they had Mimikyu.
Mm-hmm.
And this game was a nail biter. It ended up coming down to if it was just my Bax Caliber versus their 13 health Mimikyu and their around 30% or maybe 20% Iron Hands. And it just comes down to if Bax Caliber can live the play rough, because the Mimikyu is in Life Orb range. Because Borgie didn't have optimal IVs on his Mimikyu to where he could live the Life Orb recoil. So I live the play rough on 2 health. Mimikyu goes down to the Life Orb, and then the Icicle Spear goes into the Iron Hands. And that was just so stressful. I thought I lost, because I was like, I don't know if this kills or not, and Bax was able to clutch it out for me. Outside of that, getting through Dragonite was a bit annoying, because it was inner focus. The Gyarados was really nice for taunting the, what's it called? The Amoonguss. I did get a paralysis at a good time for the Amoonguss, but it was going for Pollen Puff. So I'm not sure too much how that mattered, but like it was still fortunate. And then the next turn he ended up critting my Chi Yu, so it ended up making up for it. But it was just a really crazy set, and was one of those that was like, it could have easily went the other way if, I got unlucky with rolls or something.
He had a quick hitting team report, and he mentioned what you both called the suboptimal HP IV on Mimikyu, and I disagree. And I didn't want to call him out on it in the short interview, but I'll call him out on it now. Now that you brought it up, if he had a 29 HP IV, he would have simply had 1 fewer hit points at that point in the game, and he would have still went down to Life Orb recoil. I don't think the 29 HP IV is correct on Mimikyu. So
okay.
Yeah, that's. I wanted to yell at him, so instead I'll do my little rant here. But yeah, it sounds like you guys had a really close set.
Yeah, I just took what he said, and I was like, okay, maybe that was close.
But yeah, he had a really good run too. He went 11-3. And yeah, I mean that already just round 5, you already had to play James Evans and Nick Borgie. So already like it sounds like a crazy day one, and that's not even looking at the last few rounds of day one. That looks like you also had to run the gauntlet.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so John Hugh. When I saw the team, I'm like, yeah, this is a very John team. It's Armarouge. It's Psy Spam in a Ruin meta, but I made a huge mistake game one. I know the Talonflame had U-turn, but usually whenever I play against Talonflame, I just auto play it to where I keep the Talonflame on the field as long as possible until the Tailwind runs out. Don't do that versus this team, because then the next turn, Armarouge comes in and then gets the free policy boost and then blows up your entire team. I'm like, oh, I should not do that. Game 2, I was able to adapt to that very well. I just didn't make the same mistake. Game 3, he adapted with Fluttermane and Indeedee, and I was just making the wrong plays, and it was overwhelming me with damage, and I was just losing positioning. I could feel it. And then I finally got to a position where I KO'd them both, and I'm like, I don't think that's a good thing, because I knew Talon Tusk would be in the back. Because I figured if you have Flutter, those would be the perfect things in the back more. And then, of course, he had Talon Tusk. And then it just ended up coming down to, okay, I need to hit this Fisher on the Tusk. If it doesn't hit, I might have another chance to hit another one and then make it come down to if my Burden Ting Lu can beat the Talonflame in a 1v1. I hit the first Fisher on the Tusk and it just was over. And I'm like, oh my god. That was the, I think, second time I clicked Fisher that day. The other time I clicked it, it wasn't really that meaningful. I just clicked it because I had nothing else to click. But this one was a get out of jail scenario. And I think that was kind of funny because I think I've seen him run Fisher Torkoal in an earlier tournament in this year.
He went
So I thought that
9-0
was
at Knoxville day one using Fisher Torkoal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had it coming.
Yeah. So then, right after, I play against Alex Arand. I guess they go by Michael Arand on their thing. Azulite is their username. And they had the Bax Balance team. Now, this game, well, it might seem like I have a good matchup. Like, it still depends on how good I can play it, right? And this game the RNG in this game was insane. In game 2, he literally couldn't move 4 turns in a row on both of his Pokemon because they were parried or flinching or missing moves. And it was one of those games you just feel so kind of bad because it's like they can't even play the game at that point, but you're at a winning in at this point. So you're like, we take it. Deep down, you feel bad. In the game 1, I ended up having a lot of momentum in my favor. Like, turn 1, I got a call right, and they lost their backs immediately and their Terra. Because they didn't protect... I called that they wouldn't protect it in front of Chi-Yu Flutter, and I just doubled it, and it went down. And then it lost him a lot of momentum, but he was able to bring the momentum back to where it got really scary. But then Fisher didn't connect, which is nice. I just got some crucial paralysis as well. I didn't realize I was running out of your time, which is kind of crazy. I was like, okay, I'm in a great position to win, and then I looked at my time and I'm like, wait, I have 20 seconds left. I need to click these moves fast. But yeah, I ended up winning. Very fortunate set. One of my most fortunate sets of the tournament. I think probably my second most fortunate set.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks it sucks that he got unlucky, but you know, as somebody who wanted their winning, and like we take those, so.
Yeah, absolutely. For what it's worth, your time is like harder to notice, I think, than previous generations. Because I've also gotten really close to timing out in a few different games, and I had an opponent, I think like Orlando Regionals, San Diego Regionals, who like straight up lost a game on your time when they just didn't even notice they were low. So I genuinely do think that like it is harder to notice in this generation for whatever reason.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I think it's just the text blends in with the background as well.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't pop.
But yeah, especially now in this format where you are going to have some games that do tend to go long using Pokemon like Ting Lu, especially like these balanced mirrors. I think that, you know, they can easily go 20 turns. I can definitely see your time coming into play.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then round 9.
Yeah.
Well, this was when I met the worst matchup of the entire tournament. King Gambit was a problem. I did not know it would be a problem, but that was a great call on Luca's part to bring Black Glasses with Howl and Teratark, because that takes so many KOs. I remember it surprised me in game 2, because I thought, okay, I'll just go Flutter Mane, and I'll take a hit. No, I just got Teradark Sucker Punched and lost at turn 1. I'm like, well, that didn't work. And then the Arcanine beside it is just giving it all these Howl boosts, and I'm like, I can't do anything. My Gyarados is just going to give it a boost. My Amoonguss can't really come in because it's just going to get killed by the Arcanine and the King Gambit. Baxcalibur can't really touch it. So it was one of those that is just like, okay, it just doesn't work. Chi-Yu even doesn't do enough into this team. I tried, and then if I bring Chi-Yu, they just bring in Ting Lu, and then I literally can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And that's when I figured out, I'm like, okay, day 2, if I play him again, we're gonna hit Fishers.
Yep. Yeah, you guys had a very notable rematch in day 2. But yeah, you ended up going 7-2 in day one. So I mean, you had a really, really difficult schedule. But you had to basically win out, or at least start out with 4 wins to make it to top cut. And you forced Betis to do that in day two. Do you want to talk about a couple of the notable games in your day two run?
My day two, my first opponent, Tyson Hughes. I believe they got 10th, or not 10th. Jesse got 10th.
11th,
I think
yeah.
11th. So notice a similar thing, but yeah, it's the backs balance. It's pretty much. I think it's Alex's exact team. I think they built this together.
I do see
And
the
it
Arcanine named Alex, so that is a very reasonable possibility.
Yeah. And this played out a little similarly, except like a game again game one, they lost their backs immediately. So that was a great momentum swing and they just got really overwhelmed. The difference was I think they just got overwhelmed a lot easier. They tunneled a lot with the Thunderbolt. Like I said, they were really desperate to get rid of Gyarados, so they locked into Thunderbolt. And if you lock into, like I said, if you lock into Thunderbolt, then I could just easily play around it with all my defensive pieces. Um, Game two, they started to outplay me a bunch. I got a bunch of turns wrong. Like I thought they wouldn't do the same thing twice, and then they did. I got caught a lot of double attacks into protects. Got to a position with Gyarados where I can just Thunderwave stuff freely. And that came into play. Icicle Crash ended up missing. This is the cost of using Icicle Crash and why I personally don't like it. I expect it to miss. And it missed my Flutter Mane twice. And that gave me a lot of momentum to where I could just, even though I was in a bad position, I could just take his important pieces on certain turns and that's how I ended up winning that set. And like I said, I know lucky again, but you take those wins early on, and you just shake off the fact that you're like, okay, I outplayed him game one, game two, it I could have played better, and then game three, we don't know what happened, right? It was just one of those things that you take the win.
Yep. Yeah, I mean that's just what happens when you run inaccurate moves, right? Like you're
Yeah.
gonna lose 1 or 2 games in a tournament just based on that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Icicle Spear. Obviously, you don't get the clear amulet, but does have that a little more reliability. So
And a slightly stronger power too.
hmm
I played Jody. Jody was a bit of a. This was a crazy team. I saw the preview, and I'm like, that is a choice band Corviknight. I'm terrified that U-turn plus Bullet Seed is just gonna kill my Ting-Lu. He didn't end up going for that. Actually, I think I could tell that he didn't know his Ting-Lu calcs. He even said it. He's like, "Can you tell I don't know my Ting-Lu calcs?" Because he was doubling it a bit, like with just Shadow Ball or weak stuff. Baxcalibur, at first glance, you look at this team and you're like, Baxcalibur does really well outside of the Flutter Mane and the Chi-Yu. Even if it also forces the Terra out of Brute Bonnet. So I think he noticed that and tried to take out my Baxcalibur immediately. With the Brave Bird, which did like 60 to 75, 70-ish from the banded Brave Bird, which was insane damage considering how much bulk Bax has in general. And then in game one, I was just kind of able to overwhelm with like in the positions and just have Bax take key knockouts when possible. Game two, like I said, he didn't double my Ting-Lu on a crucial turn and went for the sleep instead. And he got suboptimal sleep turns. He got a 1-turn wake, and I was able to act immediately and get a stomping tantrum on the Terra Fire Brute Bonnet. Chi-Yu also missed a heat wave. I think it double missed a heat wave. I don't know if it missed or double missed, but it missed a crucial target at least, and it got me again a lot of momentum to where he just couldn't win the game. So like a little bit fortunate again, but I also think he could have played that a bit better.
hmm Yeah. And then of course we have the set that you played on stream against Luca. And so of course we had Luca on the channel a couple days ago. He talked about his impressions of what happened. But did you want to give your side of the story?
Yeah. So as we know, my main game plan, I need to fisher through this King Gambit, and once I fisher through the King Gambit, it'll be a lot easier of a game. And he played this set really good. Like he even though I fissured the King Gambit really early, he was still able to position to a point where Palafin and Arcanine were very threatening for me with the combination of Amoonguss Pollen Puff. So that really says a lot about him as a player. Like I was starting to lose in game two specifically, where I just lost so much momentum by getting turns wrong on switches. I had my Gyarados. I didn't switch in my Gyarados at the right time, and I kept it on the field for too long. I should be every time against Palafin, I should always be switching it in and switching it out, and I just wasn't doing that, or like taunting when necessary and then switching out. And I just wasn't doing that. And he was able to punish me by getting a Powell's and just firing off really strong wave crashes into me, and I ended up having to rely on Fisher twice in game two, which I really shouldn't have had to do if I played that optimally. Um, those were the things I think I did wrong in the set. I also think there were some turns where I could have fissured more as well.
Mm-hmm.
I do think I could have had more opportunities to do it. But I really didn't want to have to rely on it outside of the King Gambit. I really wanted to. I don't like clicking. I'm not a big fan of one-hit KO moves. I always either miss or I get hit by them.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to have a consistent game plan into this kind of stuff and just rely on only as little fishers as possible.
Right.
But
And
yeah,
I
unfortunately it didn't work out.
it sounds like the first time around you tried a little more consistent game plan, and it was clear that you had a bad matchup. And honestly, Lucas said the same thing. He said, I thought she was supposed to be clicking Fissure even more, and it looks a lot less bad if you go 4 for 8 instead of 4 for 5. But that is the one downside of this King Gambit set, is it really can't hit the Ting Lu, right? And so even though it has so much damage, even though it puts so much pressure on your team, you're giving the Ting Lu turns. It's going to hit some fissures eventually. I think you have the right approach for this set, where it's like, hey, if I get 3 chances to click fissure, I'm going to hit 1 or 2 of them. And that's hopefully going to get you there. And it did. So I think that was the right approach, and obviously it paid off, and maybe a little lucky, but you had the chances. He gave you the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that was obviously maybe the highlight of the entire stream. Watching your Tinglu pop off like that, one of the most incredible moments of the entire tournament, and put you in a position where I think you needed to win. You might have been safer cut. I'm not exactly sure what it looked like at that point, but you got to play Joe UX9 in the last round. How did that go?
So he also had King Gambit, and I'm like, not another King Gambit. But this one was a lot less threatening because it didn't have the Terra Dark Black Glasses potential to just blow up my team. It does have Assurance though, which can be deadly with his threats of Fluttermane, Garchomp, and Bundle. All are really annoying for like high damage, and then Assurance. Terra Flying is good to is a lot easier to punish as well because they can just Terra into that, and then Baxcalibur hits them with the Icicle Spear. But in the first game, I think I don't know what it was. I think I played really poorly, and I just lost my Gyarados very early. And then it was just I got destroyed by the power of Garchomp and King Gambit, and I just couldn't break that. Game 2, I adapted a bit. But it ended up coming down to Baxcalibur versus King Gambit. The King Gambit is paralyzed. It's around yellow health, like low yellow, probably around like 40, 30-ish. And it comes down to the right mind games with, what's it called? Sucker Punch versus Assurance, or Paralysis as well. And I also have Ice Shard to get around the Sucker Punch, so I can just do that in certain turns. But I also can't afford to go... I really want to go for Glaive Rush, but I don't want to do that in case they click Assurance into my Baxcalibur. I was Terra Watered at this point, so there was no point in clicking Iron Head into me. It was just better to click the 2 Dark moves. I was being very careful to make it so I can get it into Glaive Rush range. He ended up getting a turn right, however, with I was Ice Shard versus Icicle Spear and Sucker Punch versus Assurance. And he got parried on that one turn, and I was able to get the Ice Shard off and just get him to where he got put in range of the Glaive Rush. And then in game three, I played a lot better and was able to just outposition him with Baxcalibur, Gyarados, Ting-Lu. So I felt a little bit better about that, but I still got pretty lucky with the... Like, he got a call right with the Sucker Punch versus Ice Shard and should have won that in two, but I felt kind of proud of my adaptation, and I felt like if I played him later, I'd do a bit better.
Uh-huh. And of course, you did get the chance to play him later in top 8. But I guess first you got to go through Thomas McCready, and I heard that he had no matchup, but I'm curious what your approach to this was.
So, against this, Ting Lu is very strong. Baxcalibur is also very strong into this. And even this is one of those situations where Ting Lu and Chi Yu are both good in the matchup, even though they counteract each other with their abilities. They didn't bring the Lilligant in game 1, and they got overwhelmed. Like, the Flutter Mane was the biggest threat, so I had to get a turn where I could just heavy slam it. This is actually the game where Zero Speed Amoonguss came to bite me, because in game 2, the Torkoal outsped me and overheated me, and I died, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. But yeah, in game 1, this is another reason why Speed Boost or Flutter is also really good. Because you just beat those great Tusks that are Scarfed. You just outspeed them, gleam them, and they die. This Dragonite set, specifically, it wasn't really threatening to my team. It didn't have, like I said, it wasn't Choice Band, didn't have Terra Blast flying. Stomping Tantrum isn't that big of a deal. And I was just not really threatened by the Dragonite. And the Tusk was like... The Tusk had to be under Tailwind in order to outspeed me, and it just wasn't really happening with the way my team was built. Because it was Gyarados intimidating the multi-scaled Dragonite. I could pressure it with Baxcalibur as well, and it was just really hard for them. And game 2 ended up coming down to, since I lost my Amoonguss early, it ended up coming down to if I would call a switch on the Torkoal. And the Torkoal, I heavy slammed the Torkoal and it switched to Flutter Mane. I got the Flutter Mane and I'm like, okay, we should be able to win this game as long as Sleep Powder turns don't go poorly. They did bring Lilligant to game 2. But for some reason he didn't play it out. And I'm kind of surprised by that. But we take those. I didn't want to play a Sleep Turns endgame. I don't think he would have been able to overpower me, but I would have been curious to see how that would have played out at least. But yeah, it would be really tough for them because their Torkoal would be -2 after like an overheat or something, or like an eruption doesn't really matter because they're chipped heavily, and Lilligant would also be dropping its stats. I think it wouldn't just have I just wouldn't have enough power versus my Ting-Lu and other stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
But,
I was hanging out with Ryan and Jesse while this was happening, and they were very confident that you had this matchup, and it sounds like you played it really well and managed to get through the Lilligant team. And of course, you got your rematch with Joe, like you were alluding to. Tell me about how your top 4 set went.
So top 4, Joe played this very well. Like, he was getting calls right, left, and right game 1, and I just got overwhelmed by offense, and it was just one of those where it's like, okay, I gotta forfeit. There was no point in playing the turn. I forfeited early because I was like, okay, there's no point in me revealing damages, like seeing how much I take from certain things, because I didn't want him to see that. Game 2, I was a bit behind, but I managed to pull it back in the end, where he ended up losing Bundle and Garchomp on crucial turns. He brought Talonflame, which I think was a bit of a mistake to this matchup, because when he brought Talonflame, it was a lot easier to play around it than the other Pokemon he could have potentially brought. At the end, it came down to King Gambit desperately trying to Terra Flying to kill my Amoonguss, but I just Icicle Spirit on the turn. He clicked Terra Flying and got the game there. Game three. Game three, I got the Spore on. I got some calls wrong and took a lot of damage, but I did get the Spore on the Flutter Mane, so I was still feeling pretty good. I did chip the King Gambit with Ruination. I missed a bunch of Ruinations. Ting Lu just can't hit Ruination, but it can hit Fissure. I should probably click the Fissure instead. But seriously, I lost a lot of momentum by doing that, by losing the Ruinations on certain turns. And T-Wave also missing was a bit of a drag, but I was still feeling pretty good because I got the Flutter Mane sleeping in the back. Eventually the King Gambit was put low range. I was going to be KOing Bundle the next turn by with having my Ting Lu on the field and having Baxcalibur. I could safely Terra Water to avoid the Iron Head. Well, still, the Freeze Dry still will be super effective, but I have the Ting Lu, so I was confident in that. And unfortunately, luck of the draw, got frozen by Freeze Dry. And I just, once I got frozen, didn't thaw, couldn't take out the Bundle, and then it all went apart from there. Mm-hmm. Just how the game went, he got lucky. I got lucky against him in the other set, and he got lucky against me in this set. It's just, that happens. And I think I got fairly lucky in like a lot of my games. I think I had 5 games in this tournament where I just got really lucky.
Well, that being said, your team, I feel like teams sometimes are built in a way where they have the ability to get lucky, right? Like, you gave yourself the opportunity to click Fissure a lot when you in the matchups where you needed to, and you have that inevitability. Obviously, there's a lot of variance in that move, but you have the opportunity to hit those moves. You like you said, you won a game because an opposing Baxcalibur missed an attack, but you didn't have that opportunity to miss those attacks, and so I think your team is very consistent, and that lends itself to having a run where you don't have to where you get lucky more than you get unlucky, I guess. So I think that this is one of the stronger teams in this format. I think the Gyarados set is really, really cool and picking up in usage, and it fits right at home on this sort of balanced Baxcalibur composition. And so I definitely recommend that everyone tries this team out. And yeah, the paste will be in the description down below. The rental is on screen right now. And yeah, congratulations on your run once again. Did you have any final words or shoutouts that you wanted to give?
So first off, I want to shout out Bat or Alexis for helping me build this team. She was the one who suggested Gyarados as well, because we were also looking at Italian tournament usage, like Van Fox as well. Shout out to him. He was the one who had the Gyarados that I first saw. Some other shout out to the cruisers. They were really helpful in prep, as well as just generally bouncing ideas off of them. And thinking, I don't think there's any more people to shout out. Oh yeah, there is. There's shout out to Jesse and the whole carpool for driving me down to the regional. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to go to the regional and wouldn't have got this result. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations once again. You did play a couple matches on stream, so if you want to go watch this team in action, I don't think that the stream sets are maybe the most representative sets, but it was definitely some really fun Pokemon to watch, both your set against Luca and your set against Joe. And so definitely recommend that you go check that out. And yeah, thank you again for coming on the channel. Really appreciate it. And
thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you all later.